My intuitive voice in that moment says to me, it goes, Colin, Colin, what if you don't stop? What? What if you don't stop? What if you don't set up your tent again? What? No, just don't stop. Just keep going. Just ride this flow state all the way out. And all of a sudden, I listened to the intuitive voice in that moment. I was like, I'm having a conversation with myself, right? But I'm like, you're right. You're right. And I literally say to myself, I am not stopping until I get to the edge of the Antarctic continent. It's 77 miles away. I've never gone more than 20 miles, and I'm the most exhausted and the most hungry and the most tired that I've ever been. But my mind all of a sudden forgot all of that weakness. My mind bought into, I can see myself at the finish line. 10 hours goes by, 15 hours goes by. My family's back home. It's Christmas Day, coincidentally. They're tracking me on this GPS tracker that they can see a signal from, every so often. And I stop at the same time every single day, 8 p.m. Antarctica time, 3 p.m. back home in Oregon, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. They're like looking like his dot's still moving. Oh, maybe he's getting an extra hour in. Another 10 hours goes by. He's still moving, but they're starting to freak out now because they're like, what is he still moving? What's happening? He's never done this, but I'm just locked in. 25 hours goes by, 30 hours goes by. Ultimately, 32 and a half hours goes by. On the very horizon, I see this post. I know there's a post that marks the edge of the continent. I've researched this, whatever. And I can see it in the distance. I realize I'm about to do it. I sit down on the ground for a second, just look out, take a few deep breaths, still in this flow state. And the resonance wasn't, Colin, you're the shit, man. Yo, you did this shit that no one's ever done. You're such a fucking badass. The voice was saying, infinite love, an echo of just the resonance of the connection to my family, the connection to my community, the connection to the kids and the people I was trying to inspire. But ultimately, just the resonance. I was alone. I was probably quite likely the most isolated human being on the entire planet at that moment. But I felt connected to it all. I felt connected to energy, to source, the universe, whatever I don't know. I'm not particularly traditionally religious person, but however you want to call that, a greater power just connected into that. And with that final last breath of energy, I walked to the edge, touched the post, and I became the first person in history to cross Antarctica solo, unsupported and human powered. But again, the intuition knew. I knew the answer in that moment. It was guiding me. It was guiding me to make that decision. So it's not always guiding you to turn back. It's not always guiding you to turn forward. It's not always guiding you to turn right or turn left or do the thing or don't do the thing. But it is guiding you because we know. So, man, I didn't order the limiting beliefs in any particular order. To answer your first question, I didn't order them in any particular order. Obviously, I ordered them because I thought about how I want to construct this book. But they're not ranked. They're not this one's better than that one. I did ask a lot of people, including my Instagram audience and other folks, like, what is stopping you from living your best life? Just ask that question over and over again. Put it in my Instagram comments, just ask people. And you think you're going to ask that question over and over again, you're going to get like 1,000 different responses. But it turns out that I basically just got the 10. I really got the same 5 or 6. And then stretch that to like the same 10 over and over and over and over and over and over again. I was like, holy shit. So you guys are all just like me, and we're all just dealing with like the same, handful of limiting beliefs that are some version of, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. What if I fail? I'm not strong enough. What if people criticize me? I hate being uncomfortable. And so it's structured in that way. And the truth of the matter is that I think each one of the limiting beliefs in the 12-hour walk, we can all relate to, because I think myself included, we've all experienced them at some point in our life. You might be at a phase in your career. I've been fortunate to reach this phase in my career where I don't have enough money is not a current limiting belief. I've spent a lot of my life feeling that way, a lot, the majority of my life. And I've worked super hard. That's not a current limiting belief based on circumstances I work super hard for. If that's where you're at, like, that limiting belief isn't in your current psyche, but I'm guessing it's been in your psyche at some point. And that's true of any of these. Maybe you're not afraid to fail. Maybe you're not afraid to fail anymore. You failed a bunch and you realize that, and I love to say, failure plus perseverance equals success. At some point along the line, we learned that lesson. I wouldn't wish the burn accident on my worst enemy. Burn yourself to a crisp, be in Thailand, be afraid, pain, the suffering, the cause of harm to my family. But in the end, that shit taught me some of life's greatest lessons, as I'm sure the accident of the injury in your NFL career. You're like, man, like that taught you resilience and grit. And those 10 seasons that you had after that were built upon the intensity and the being able to overcome that obstacle. And so we learn. I didn't fail. I either succeeded or I learned something. Failure plus perseverance equals success. So again, that may or may not be your limiting belief in this moment, but I would find it very hard to believe. I hope there's people out there, but I would find it very hard to believe that someone reads this book and all 10 chapters are like, yeah, man, I don't deal with any of these. Nah, I've never had any of these doubts ever before in my mind.
Well, then
like I said,
I always tell people, I'm like, you're the one who's never failed. Like you're Neo. Like fuck, you just break the matrix. I mean, it's dude.
So I mean, I'm like, hell yeah, man, I want to hang out. Like, DM me, let's hang out. Like,
yeah, I'd love to know all these people that don't have any self doubt. So at Berkeley, I was a rhetoric major, and there was a lot of like English philosophy, and I read a ton. And like, I always go back to, and I can't remember. There's two things. Like one, people make their own prisons. So I mean, we are, and it came from a story of this guy who was incarcerated, and he like. While he was I can't remember exactly who it is, but like he was a political prisoner, and he basically like in his mind built this clock, and when he got out, he like basically built the clock into the Smithsonian. And so the idea was that like we built our own prisons, and even in his mind he was free regardless of how he was encased. And then the other one I pulled up, and I don't know why this one popped into my mind, but it was a Russian philosopher said, all religions will pass, but this will remain, sitting in a chair looking in the distance staring at the mountains. And like, I think about like all this religion and people, this imagery and what I think like how many people have stood at the bottom and looked up at Mount Everest over, the eternity of time, regardless who they were. And you know what? And, nobody will ever climb that. And then people do and reach that. It's just the pictures alone. Like as I pulled up some of these pictures of Everest and some like K2 as you're talking about it, like, just looking at the pictures gives me a sense of like angst and like fear, where you look at it and you're like, holy shit, like people have climbed that, and how many people have died and summited. And dude, it's fucking inspiring.